kick it over to Carl, and he's going to provide a couple updates. Update 1 is our draft budget calendar, and update 2 is our district reserve plan. Before Carl gets going, I want to point out that we did have a preliminary look at the draft budget calendar at our last meeting, and at that meeting, we did decide, and the board agreed, that we would move the Monday, May 6th meeting to Wednesday, May 8th, and that is to be in compliance with our public hearing for the budget. So it falls between 7 and 14 days of the budget vote later in May. So I just wanted to make sure I reminded the board of that. All right, Carl, take it away.
I feel like year after year, you're getting better at the budget calendar, Mr. Ganster, so I appreciate you sharing that 7 to 14 day window, because that puts us exactly in compliance. And so hence the budget, the budget hearing had to be moved to May 8th. Mr. Ganster did a great job of talking about the draft budget calendar. Tonight, the board is going to approve the final budget calendar. That's something every school district has to do before they go into budget season. There has to be a minimum of 3 budget workshops or presentations, as they're called, which we have our 3 budget presentations laid out. There are also certain timelines and things that have to be submitted to New York State in order to meet the requirements of voting day for a school district budget. And that budget calendar lays out essentially all those dates and critical timelines which our school district, just like every other school district, needs to adhere to. So once again, tonight, the board is just going to be approving the final budget calendar as we head into budget season. The second piece, the district reserve plan. Similar to the audit, the regulatory audit that was presented by Mengel Metzger Bar in October, every district has a best practice. The comptroller recommends that the districts, the board, approve and a district post a reserve plan year over year. That's something over the last couple of years we haven't done, but it's something moving forward I want to make sure is a best practice and is a yearly practice as we move forward year over year in this district. So we've got the 23-24 district reserve plan that after tonight's board approval, we'll be posting on the district website for anybody to see as well. And prior to finalizing this district reserve plan, something we did was also reach out to our auditors, Mengel Metzger Bar, and make sure they signed off on the reserve plan as well, so that we had one more layer of scrutiny before bringing it in front of the board tonight. So that's about it, Mr. Ganser. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Carl. That does it for the superintendent's update.
Okay, thank you. Board discussion topics. Okay, so our goals. We talked a little bit about them at our last retreat last month. We temporarily decided to keep goal 2 and 3, so engage with the Mid-Lakes community to increase awareness about Phelps-Clifton Springs Board of Education and district efforts. Goal 3 was ensure resources to support professional development, employee retention, and career satisfaction of all district staff. And goal 4, we had talked about adding the words continue to implement student engagement opportunities and support new proposals to enrich student life. And then goal 1, we didn't get a chance to discuss that one too much. Does anybody have ideas of keep, change, get rid of, as far as goal 1, which was gain a solid knowledge foundation of student academic performance and strategies being implemented to improve student achievement in our district? I know for me, I feel like we should keep this. I'll just speak for myself. I feel like
agree.
This is something.
I feel like we should keep it.
Okay.
I agree, yeah.
Okay. We will go ahead and we do have it on the agenda for later in the meeting to approve those as our goals for this upcoming year. So as long as there's no major changes, sounds like there aren't any changes to what's being proposed here, we'll go ahead and vote on that a little later in the meeting. Does anybody else have anything? Did the legislative committee meet?
They did.
Since our last meeting. So do you have an update?
I do. So Regent Hale attended this meeting, so it was really kind of just a discussion about how we can best kind of maintain communication with him and really just making sure that we're, again, advocating for things at the legislative level. There was, so I think just some good discussion around that in terms of the communication with him and just solidifying kind of our, as we had talked about, the survey results to kind of send on so that the position paper can be submitted in January. So kind of finalized all of that, and things are moving forward.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. The other committee that meets regularly now is our policy committee, and you'll hear updates about that too as we move forward through the meeting. Does anybody have anything else for board discussion for this evening? Okay. We are moving on to public comment. So the Board of Education values the input of the Mid-Lakes community and welcomes public comment on any topic related to board work, with the exception of matters pertaining to individual personnel and/or students. All public comments must include appropriate language and observe proper decorum. Anyone making public comment must identify themselves by name and address. The public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes and 1 comment per person. Individual comments will be limited to 2 minutes. The board does not respond to items presented or questions raised through public comment. However, the board may discuss topics of public comment at a later time and/or contact the individual who submitted the comment. So first we have Tanya Larson.
Thank you. I'm going to have 2 minutes. I'm going to try to keep.
You can come on.
Hi, my name is Tanya Larson. I live directly my address, 2299 Leicester Road in Phelps. I'm a mother of a child here. I'm here wanted to bring to the Board of Education's attention to the issues that have been occurring for the last 2 years involving our daughter being bullied physically, sexually, cyberly, and emotionally. The facts. Our daughter has an IEP with a mental and learning disability. She is, according to New York State law, entitled to a safe and supportive environment free from discrimination, taunting, harassment, etc. on school property. A fact. We have filed over 12 DASA, Dignity for All complaint forms. Complaints involved a gang assault, which the SRO absolutely did nothing about, verbal and physical threats, sexual bullying, and sadly, a traumatic physical assault that occurred on November 17th in the high school cafeteria while being videotaped by students. A fact, she was struck in the back of the head and face 8 times, resulting in medical treatment at Well Now in Clifton Springs ED. She had major bruising and swelling to her head, her neck, her face, as well as a broken eye vessel. Note the girl's mom is a TA in the elementary school. Neither have apologized. Fact, she only received 5 days in out-of-school suspension. To back up a month prior, the school failed us on October 16th when a group of girls threatened Caitlin, my daughter, severe bodily harm. We immediately informed the school and picked up Caitlin. The next day, as advised by Starbridge, it's an agency overlooking her IEP. We begged for New York State law mandating the option for home instruction with a tutor. Due to the constant bullying, my daughter's mental health, education, and grades were deteriorating, and she was becoming suicidal. That week of October 16th, the school denied my request twice, saying they did not offer this option. After a week of emails and Zoom calls with the school, Caitlin was forced back in school instruction on that Monday. Sadly, just days prior to that assault, after consulting with Empire Justice out of Albany and the Morgan law firm, we confirmed that she should have been provided in August. This assault could have been prevented. A fact, the school reiterated Caitlin's only option in October was a possible alternative placement that ended after an updated IEP evaluation and meeting, which was held on December 14th. On December 14th, that was held. Alternative placement, again, was not an option. A fact, oddly, after I retained an attorney last month, and home instruction with a tutor after 31 days was finally initiated today. It wasn't last month, though. They said they didn't allow it. Fact, I am filing a lawsuit versus the school, including the SRO officer, the bullies, and their parents. I will never allow this to stop and happen to another child. One last point. No child deserves this. No parent should ever have to witness a video of their child getting beat while they're screaming, "Stop."
Mike?
I'm not speaking, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay,
Signed in, I didn't
all
know.
right. Adam Eldridge?
The button with the person on it?
All right. Do I need to state my address and all that too, or no?
Please.
Adam Aldridge from 255 Main Street, Phelps. So we're doing the budget, right? Do we got room in there for another SRO officer or no? That'd be what I'd be asking you, because Main Street, Phelps, we got cars just blowing through reds. And then the BOCES over here have got their buses coming into town, and they're blowing through the traffic lights out there and making a mess. And then the buses park over here at the gas station smoking cigarettes by the gas pumps for the BOCES. Not ours. Our buses don't run that traffic light. It's BOCES, but they're in our same facility as us. So typically I work around the town, and when I come into town, our guy is headed home, and the elementary hasn't dumped out yet. So if he's headed home and he's part-time, I would assume, right, we got 1.5 employees, right, on SRO? Anybody answer that? Contract? No? Okay. So what I'm asking is we should upgrade our security and put another SRO on and put another one. This is a big facility. You've got stuff going on outside that you guys don't see because you're working in here. It's not your fault. I'm not blaming nobody. It's just there's a lot going on these days. And if we as taxpayers are spending money, let's spend it the right way. Let's get another SRO. I don't know what it costs, but who the heck cares? Our kids are important, so I could really give two craps, you know. I say we just do it. So that's what I got to say.
Thank you. All right. All right, on to new business items. So we will start with item A, resolution appointing district clerk, Ms. Mann. Do we have, let me make sure I get some right pages here too. Where am I? Oh, I'm there. Okay. Sorry. All right. Is there a motion to approve Ms. Mann as our new district clerk and confidential secretary to the superintendent?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item A as presented, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right. Item B is our Board of Education goals. Is there a motion to approve the board goals as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of our Board of Education goals for the 2023-24 school year as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right, policy manual modifications. Mr. Ganster is going to give us a little information on.
All right, so we are in full swing of our policy manual review, and we now have 3 distinct sections to this presentation. We're going to do first reads on 2 policies. We're going to do second reads on 2 additional policies, and we're finally at the point with that first batch of policies having to do with instructional materials and student gender identity. We're at the point where we can finally adopt and retire the policies that we've been discussing. So what we'll do is we'll take the time. I'm sorry, Carl, let me just, there we go, right there. All right. And I did move from a fall theme to a winter theme. However, I'm beginning to think winter is not going to come. But I don't know, apparently there might be snow in the forecast tonight. We'll see what happens. All right. So hopefully I didn't just jinx that. So here we go. Members of the policy committee are posted. Our last meeting was on December 11th. Our next meeting is on January 8th. So we're going to just take a look at our first reads. So tonight we are, and now it's just not wanting to comply here. I don't know why it's not going past. Let me try the click. Okay, I'm gonna escape out of there, and we're gonna go like this. So there I am. All right, now let's see if we can do that. Okay, cool. No, I don't know why. Okay, so we're going to have first reads on 2 policies. We're going to take a look at policy 3421, that is Title IX and sex discrimination, that's the title. And we're going to take a look at a kind of parallel policy entitled non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district. So here's why right now. So policy 3421, that's the Title IX and sex discrimination. So the federal law that governs this policy or pushes us to include a policy like this goes all the way back to what's called the Educational Amendments Act of 1972. All right, so this has been around for a long, long time. Now, the original intent of that act was to protect employers and protect the public, protect the public from employers discriminating against human beings based on what sex they were, right? And in modern times, we might say what gender they are, okay? Now, what that didn't include overtly was sexual harassment, okay? And back in 2020, the federal government went back and amended that 1972 Act to explicitly contain and hold sexual harassment within the law. So what happened between 72 and 2020 was that there were guidance documents put out by the federal government that said, and court decisions that said, sexual harassment was protected by the Education Amendment Act of 1972, but they never took the time to actually include it. So back in 2020, they went and overtly included it in the law. So our policy update really has to do with the fact that that law was updated back in 2020. And what we're seeing with some of these policies, specifically changes that happened throughout the pandemic, some of the policies were not paid attention to. Those changes weren't paid attention to because of a disruption in how we did business. So we wanted to make sure that we were including this near the beginning of our policy review process and make sure that we have a policy that meets the standard of the amended 1972 Education Amendments Act. So some of the specifics that we went through and had to take a look at. So, and I'm looking on my screen because I don't want to leave anything out here. So this includes a definition of what sexual harassment is based on the amended law. It includes the definition of what's called actual knowledge. So it really dives into technically what it means for an employer to have actual knowledge of sex discrimination or sexual harassment happening in the workplace. It includes the Title IX coordinator requirements. It includes requirements related to reports and formal complaints of sexual harassment, the grievance process for complaints of sexual discrimination, the grievance process for formal complaints of sexual harassment, corresponding timeframes for investigations, language surrounding what are called informal resolutions that can happen between an employer and an employee in a case like this, an appeals process, dismissals of claims, training for our employees, and appropriate record keeping. So the updated policy is included in the board packet. I'm not going to go over it line by line. It would literally take us about 45 minutes. But what I would encourage the board to do is take the time to read that policy between now and our next meeting when we have a second reading, and we'll take some of this time to field questions if there are any. So then the next first read is policy 3420, which is entitled Non-Discrimination and Anti-Harassment in the District. So here's how it's corresponding. If you look back at Title IX and Education Amendment Act of 1972, it's specifically on sex discrimination, okay? And it doesn't include other forms of discrimination. For example, discrimination based on race, color, religion, disability, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, military status, sex, age, or marital status. So this other policy provides language for how the district would respond in instances of alleged discrimination on everything else, essentially, okay? And the basis of that policy, there are a few laws here. So there is the Americans with Disability Act, which is from 1990. There's Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And then Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So those laws along with some updates in this policy to bring it into what I would say like harmony with the Title IX update. That's what this update for 3420 is. So again, it's actually less extensive than the Title IX policy, but again, I would encourage you to read that policy over, and we can field questions in our second read. You know, I want to fall just short of saying that these are boilerplate policy updates, but they're required. We have to have these policies by law, and everything contained within them is guided by law. So there's not a ton of wiggle room within the policies themselves anyway. But it's a good time to take a moment, read the policy, become familiar with it, and ask any questions that you may have. So we'll call that our first read on those policies. Our second read, going to something a little more lighthearted, I would say. We did a first read on what we're calling our animal policies. And it's assistance animals and animals on school grounds. So our assistance animal policy talks about service animals, right? So those are animals that are used by folks with disabilities that need that service animal to help them get through their day. So you think of things like seeing eye dogs, right? And it also, curiously, and we talked about this last time, includes miniature horses. And the miniature horses, for some folks who have mobility issues, actually can serve as like a very sturdy partner when walking and moving around. So in limited cases, we could possibly see a miniature horse as a service animal. And of course, the dogs that are used for folks. Now, the reason we reviewed that policy was because there's a lot of energy these days in having therapy dogs in schools. And that's something that we wanted to be able to provide for our students here. The policy articulates all sorts of very specific circumstances that have to be present for a dog like that to be on campus. And I just want to go over a handful of those really quickly. I have it up here. Here we go. So when we take a look specifically at therapy dogs, we have to receive a request. The request has to provide general information about the proposed use of the therapy dog, including when and where. It has to have personal information about the therapy dog and handler, including name, address, and phone. And then we need a copy of the therapy dog's current licensure from the local licensing authority, so whatever town they live in, that has to be a registered dog. We have to have its vaccination and immunization records from a licensed veterinarian. We have to have a copy of a certification from an AKC recognized therapy dog organization. So the AKC recognizes, or our trainer can become AKC recognized, and our therapy dogs would have to have been through a training that was recognized by the AKC, and we would need a copy of that. We would need a copy of the insurance policy that provides liability coverage for the work of the therapy dog and handler while on school grounds, and names the district as an additional insured person or entity on that policy. Certification from the handler that while on school grounds, a therapy dog will do all of these things: be cleaned, well groomed, free of parasites, illness, or injury, remain under the handler's control throughout the use of through the use of a leash or other tether, unless use of a leash or other tether would interfere with the dog's service, be supervised and accompanied by the handler, wear a therapy dog ID and or bandana, not disrupt the educational process by excessive barking or other behavior, only go to locations that have been authorized by district admin, be fed, exercised, and cleaned up after the handler. So all of these things would have to fall into place in order for us to have a therapy dog approved and in use here on campus. So are there any questions with this particular policy? Because we are at that second read phase, and I want to make sure we pump the brakes and allow the board to ask any questions that they may have. Okay. Our second animal policy to review are animals on school grounds, just generally speaking, okay? We reviewed several policies from surrounding districts to take a look at this. And I want you to think about, we're all looking at the springtime. It's going to get nice out. Baseball games are going to start happening. Lacrosse games are going to start happening. And we know people sometimes bring their dogs to campus, right? So this places some limitations on that. So let's just read through these bullet points so we can understand what we're looking at here. So animals are prohibited from school grounds from 30 minutes before school through 30 minutes after school ends on days when school is in session, except as permitted by a building principal or for instructional or safety purposes. So basically what we're saying here is we don't want folks walking their dogs or other animals on campus when we have a lot of kids here, right? Because the random dog that someone might be walking on campus, we don't know anything about that animal. We want to keep our kids safe. So we would like to keep the campus animal-free with the exception of animals here for safety. Think drug sniffing dog, bomb sniffing dog, something like that. Animals that are here for educational purposes, think about our agriculture programs and the cute ducks that they raised last year. And then could also at this point include therapy dogs after that policy is approved, and of course service animals as well. So then second bullet point, dogs and other animals capable of wearing a leash must be on a leash and properly restrained at all times. All animals must be under the owner's control at all times. Next, pet owners are required to be responsible owners by cleaning up and removing animal waste from school grounds. Animals are not allowed on playgrounds, athletic fields, tracks, and courts. Our facilities team spends a lot of time grooming those facilities and managing those facilities. We don't want them used for the recreation of animals, okay? And finally, assistance animals and animals used for law enforcement purposes would be exempt from the terms of this policy. And then a final disclaimer that the animal owner assumes all risk when bringing the animal on school grounds. So that would be the policy that governs animals being on school grounds, generally speaking. All right. Any questions on this particular policy? Okay.
You're good?
All right.
Tried to be comprehensive.
Yeah, we're trying. All right, so then the last thing we'll do is we've spent a lot of time, we did our first read and our second read of these particular policies. These would be the recommended actions for these tonight. 4 policies to adopt, 8320 textbooks, library materials, and other instructional materials. 8340 instructional materials and non-public school students. 8330 objection to instructional materials and controversial issues. And then we want to, well, let me skip to the next one. Another adoption, an updated student gender identity, which was another update that we pushed for because of changes in law. And then finally, retiring 8331 because controversial issues was actually combined with 8330. So we would no longer need 8331. So those are the recommended actions for policy tonight. The policy committee is looking at tentative first reads of a workplace violence prevention policy, which is mandated by, it's not a new law, but an educational entity. It is new that an educational entity is included in that law. So we may be looking at a policy statement there. And then we've also, at the policy committee level, started to take a look at policy related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that does it for policy updates and descriptions tonight. So there we are, and then I think it would be time to take action, if you so choose.
So is there a motion to, should I break these down into adoption, retirement, or should I just do the whole thing?
I think you could just do them all in one and say, according to the recommended actions.
Oh, that's true. That's how it's presented. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the policy readings and modifications as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the policy readings and modifications as presented, say aye. 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 All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right, on to item D, contracts and agreements. Is there a motion to approve the contracts as presented? 3.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of item D, the 3 contracts as presented, say aye. Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. All right, I'd like to block items E through G. So the extra classroom audit corrective action plan, and the single audit. Is there a motion to approve items E through G as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of items E through G as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All of those opposed? Motion carried. And I would like to block items H through J, the budget calendar, which we talked about, the district reserve plan we also talked about, and budget transfers. Is there a motion to approve items H through J as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items E through G as presented, say aye.
H through J.
Oh, sorry, H through J. H
Aye.
through J is presented.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Cross that one off. All right, on to K. I was wondering why things weren't lining up on here. Should have been my first clue. Item K, minimum wage increase. Is there a motion to approve the minimum wage increase as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item K as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item L, field trips. Is there a motion to approve the field trip for the class of 2024?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of item L as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. On to M, athletic mergers. Is there a motion to approve the 2 athletic mergers for the spring, the boys and girls lacrosse?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of the athletic mergers as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And final new business item, Mid-Lakes fundraisers. The 3 fundraisers, is there a, 5. Oh, wow, what happened there? Okay, sorry. The 5 fundraisers, is there a motion to approve the fundraisers as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of item N, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, on to personnel. Why does it keep skipping around on me? What's going on? Is that something you're doing? All right, I'd like to block items A through C. Is there a motion to approve items A through C as presented? They're all appointments.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of A through C as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And item D, mentors. Is there a motion to approve the mentors as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of item D as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And substitute appointments. Is there a motion to approve the substitute appointments as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor of the substitute appointments as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. And on to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting for the purpose of entering into executive session for the purpose of discussing matters leading to the appointment, employment, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. We